going to start off with an affirmation this morning because it addresses what really and truly that I want to talk about. So if you're comfortable with it and if you feel like it, repeat after me. The universe is for me.
The universe is for me.
The universe conspires for my good.
The universe conspires for my good.
There was a time in my very, very young life, and I'm going to sit down because I have low vision and I don't want to crash. I know y'all are used to some pretty energetic speakers. Okay. When I was a little boy, I knew that the universe was for me. I was so connected. I used to sleep out on our balcony when I was about 9 years old, 10 years old, and I would lay there looking at the sky for shooting stars. And of course, one would happen. And then when they happened, I would get so excited. And then I would just stay awake a little bit longer to find another and another and another. But when I became a young adult, I thought the universe was against me because people, places, and things showed up that were in my way. So I didn't think the universe was for me at all. In Houston in the early 80s, there was a hurricane that I actually took personal because it kept me from doing something I needed to do. That's how much I believed the universe was against me. But then I found religious science, Ernest Holmes, A Science of Mind, a community like this, and I found out the universe was for me. But what I had to do was I had to use the universal laws in my favor. And when I used the universal laws against me, it simply would show up. It's not a punishment from the universe, but it's simply an action of an impersonal universe that does not pick you out just because it's Thursday and do something bad to you. That's not what the universe is about. But today I want to extend that universe is for me to the universe conspires for my good, because it has for me, and I want to share this story with you this morning. If you've been coming here for a while, you know that my eyes are experiencing, I won't say I have, my eyes are experiencing advanced glaucoma. And I can see kind of like this, but I can't do this or this. And my life for the last couple of years, with the exception of the last few months, I've lived pretty much a hermit. I've stayed in my apartment where the lights are just right, and I can do this and I can do that. I don't really have to work anymore, but I just kind of became recluse. I kind of just hunkered in. I just lived with it. After my 6th surgery this past January, my doctor on the examination 2 weeks after the surgery, he said to me, "You need to prepare to live your life as a sightless person." Now, he didn't use the word blind, but that's what he meant. So the first thing I did, knowing that I have a community that supports me, even though I was at that time kind of estranged from them, I didn't talk to that many people because I didn't want to tell the story over and over and over and over again. You know how that gets. We all have done that. We find ourselves telling the same story, and the universe is just going to keep giving it to you, whatever it is. And another thing I have found out about the universe is that the universe knows order. If you tell the universe all your problems and then tell it what you want, it's going to give you all your problems before it gives you what you want. And I'm living proof of that. But there is a way that we can tell our stories and not come out negative. They can come out very, very positive for all of us. So I sent out an email after I received that news. And I found out within a couple of short weeks that there are people in our community that will just not accept what doctors say. And some of you were in on this, so some of you know what I'm talking about. About 2 weeks after I sent out the email, Harry Shader, I know that most of you know who he is, he calls me up and he said, "How you doing? We talked about the eyes for a few minutes, and then he said, I believe that there's enough support to get the money together to send you to a healer in Brazil named John of God. Would you go?" Yes. Now, the first thing is, I did not know who John of God was. But the mere saying the words Brazil, I kind of like, what is happening right here? So I said yes to him, and we talked for a little bit more. He told me to, read about John of God, check out some YouTubes. And I did, and about a week later, he called me back, and he and Lee, Reverend Lee, had talked, and Lee directed him to a website called Give Forward. So he put my story on this website, and my picture, and trying to raise $5,000 to send me to Brazil to stand in front of this healer. Within 5 weeks, we had raised 115% of the $5,000 needed to send me to Brazil. That right there in itself is a testament not only to our community, but also people we don't even know. They could be anything, but people have faith. And that is one of the things that I have really and truly come to understand by the experience that I have lived in the last couple of months. People really and truly do have faith. I had it too, but my faith was cloudy. I was looking through a glass, literally darkly, as the Bible says. And so my faith was clouded. But y'all's faith, Harry and the people that went to that website and donated that money, they had faith when I didn't have faith. That's what you go to Jean for prayer. She has the faith. If you have lost it for a moment, actually, I've come to understand you cannot lose it. It's an energy, just like every other energy, but it can get clouded, and that's what had happened to me. So June the 1st, I found myself on an airplane, first to Miami and then to Brazil. And on the way over there, I just could not imagine, how did this happen? I did not ask for it. I did not know about John of God. All I did was send out an email asking for prayer, and the next thing I know, I'm on a plane going to Brazil. Now that is when the universe conspires for your good. Because that is what happened to me. I believe that people, places, and things show up in our lives, whether they're good or bad. There is always something there for us if we can look at it like that. And after my experience, which I will get more into, after my experience, I can certainly tell you that my condition is not a bad thing. I don't have time to go blind. I'm very busy now, and my life has changed. I'm not afraid anymore. So I wrote an article that is with the Science of Mind magazine right now. They haven't given me a yes or a no yet. But I wrote an article, and I want to share a couple of things with you from it. And after service today, if you want my email address and you want to receive the article, it's quite long, it's 12 pages. If you want to receive the article, I will email it to you, and you can email it to anybody that you would like to, because it gives a very, very clear message about healing and cures. We can have a lot of cures, but cures are mostly on the physical level. Healings, however, are on the spiritual level. I will read to you what Ernest Holmes has to say about that. He says, there is a physical cure, there is a psychological cure, there is only one kind of healing, and that is a spiritual healing. And it takes a spiritual healing before anything can manifest itself into the physical and be permanent. Ask a lot of people in AA. A lot of them stop drinking, and 10 years later, whatever, 5 years later, whatever, they just start drinking again. They had the cure, but they didn't have the healing, and that is one reason why one of their steps clearly states having had a spiritual awakening. A spiritual awakening. And that is what I had on my trip. First of all, where I went was a little town in central Brazil called Abandania. And I will only say that one time today. If you say it 5 times real fast, you'll probably stutter for the rest of your life. It's about an hour and a half cab drive away from the capital of Brazil, which is Brasilia. And it is on a high plateau, this little town. And I had to have a guide. After we raised the money, Harry went online and found out what all I needed. Had to have a visa, of course, a passport, and insurance, evacuation insurance. You got to have that to go there. Anyway, he jumped through all of the hoops. But after I got there, I realized that this little town is divided up into two parts. And the guide that I had on the cab ride in said, now, the right side of the highway is everything spiritual and John of God. The left side of the highway is everything else, and we don't want you to get on that side. The town was unbelievable. Mostly a lot of metal shacks, a lot of motorbikes, not motorcycles, motorbikes whizzing in and out. And they had one main street in the good side, or the spiritual side of the town, and it led to a place called the Casa. The Casa is a compound, a group of buildings that could be either a church or a hospital, depending upon how you're looking at it. And all I can say about my first experience there is that I was ready. If you want to have an incredible spiritual experience, you need to get your intellect knocked off course somehow, some way. And what I had been through for the last 2 years, first of all, closing myself in, believing that there wasn't any help, that that's what the way it was and that's the way it's going to be, to all of a sudden receiving this unbelievable support from all of these people. And then I am in Brazil. I never thought in the world I would go to Brazil. But there I was. So my first time that I actually walked onto the Casa grounds, this is what I wrote in the article. And I wrote this that afternoon, so therefore I was quite emotional. And in the article it describes that street. It's nothing but hotels, souvenir shops, crystal shops, resell clothing items. Just there were lots of beggars, people just asking for money. I mean, it was just so poverty-stricken. It was unbelievable. And in my opinion, a little bit too touristy for a sacred, place. So here's what happened. After I walked behind those buildings, it was there that I had my first experience of God in this sacred place. Behind the dirt roads, behind the poverty, the resale shops, the trinkets, the souvenirs, behind everything that to me seemed out of place for a sacred place. It was there. I saw it, I felt it, I touched it, and it touched me. It was real, and I was made real in its presence. I had gone deep enough onto the Casa grounds to find an outdoor pavilion with benches, pews, and a roof. As I walked onto it, I knew that it was more than a majestic view, more than the wind pressing against my body, more than the rapture of my soul. It was more than my spirit had ever longed for. It was perfect life. And at that moment, I was perfect. At that moment, my spirit was freed from its limited shell, and I wasn't aware of my body or my problems. Just an overwhelming sense of peace and love. For someone who hasn't shed a tear for a very long time, I cried like a child until the beauty and the sensation became more than I could bear. And when I just couldn't take it anymore, I started my way back. What happened to me at that moment? My intellect was so knocked off that it did not try to house my spirit inside my body. And a couple of times people have asked me, well, what do you mean you couldn't stand anymore? I found that my body got very afraid. that my actual physical being, I felt as though I was going to explode or die. And I have to say, if that's dying, okay. But the Spirit, God, is absolutely perfect in every way. There is no eye condition. There is no cancer. There is no loneliness. There is nothing other than this incredible, expansive life. I tried later that afternoon to recreate the moment, but I couldn't. Everything changed that afternoon. That was a Tuesday, and John of God is in the Casa Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And what I noticed when I walked down on the street left from my hotel to go back down to the Casa and to the pavilion, that there were people everywhere. People walking, people in wheelchairs, people dragging their feet, people being helped, people, one woman was pulling an obviously ill child. There were large double-decker buses where people had ridden for 35 hours to get to this man, and they actually slept on those buses too. It was amazing. It was just, it looked like something out of a movie because everybody was heading down toward the Casa. And the next day I would find out why. The next day John of God was there, and if you've never heard of John of God or who he is, he's 60-ish something. He's a Brazilian farmer. He only went to the second grade in school, and he started doing his healing work at age 16. And every year he heals tens upon thousands of people each year. There's an incredible belief, there's an incredible synergy, an energy that is all there and around there. One night, someone with a digital camera took pictures of the parking lot of the Casa, and there were glowing balls, they were energy orbs, all in that area that you could look at and see absolutely nothing. And I couldn't capture it on my cell phone, but a digital phone actually captured these energy balls. It is so strong there that anyone could have had or did have or they all had the same kinds of experiences that I had. Even though John of God has been on television many times, lots of YouTubes, Oprah Winfrey, Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, the whole gang. They've all been down there. They've all had their experiences, and they've all had experiences like I have. So my question, or you may be wondering, is why can't we have that here? We can't have it here. I've been to places where the energy was so thick that you could feel it on your skin as you walked through it. And what that is accumulation of people's faith. It's an accumulation of meditation. It's an accumulation of prayer. That's how come when you walk into a mosque or a church that where people have been for a long time, hundreds of years maybe, you actually feel this energy, and it connects with the energy in you that's God. And then these wonderful things can happen. And that is not to say that it cannot happen at home in your own living room. Since I've been back, I've had 5 of these same experiences. And I kind of live my life right now, because I never know when it's going to happen. I kind of live my life right now as a 7-year-old, standing first in line in front of a roller coaster with a ticket in my hand. I go around with this incredible anticipation of it's going to happen around the corner, or the next time I speak with somebody, or the next time I'm just laying in bed, and it's all I can do to hold my head onto my body. And then I go back to living life. I believe that it's all here for us. I don't believe that we have to go anywhere, but I will say this: going there, through all that I went through to get there, 10.5-hour plane ride, and I don't sleep on planes. But all of that knocked my intellect, knocked my reasoning power off to where my spirit said, yes, let's do something. And that's what happened to me. John of God is a medium. He incorporates 33 spirits, entities, into his body. He's called an unconscious medium because he has no idea of what he's done after he does it. He has no, they have to tell him, oh, you just did this and you just did that. He does physical as well as spiritual surgeries. If you're between the ages of 18 and 52 and you want a physical surgery, he will do it. You can watch, there's some YouTubes that you can watch where he's actually cutting on people. And I ask, well, you know, what is that all about? Why would someone choose to be cut on unless, why would they choose that if they could have a spiritual surgery? I had a spiritual surgery, but some people want to be cut on. The answer that was given to me is some people just have to have something physical to believe in. Some people just have to see blood. When I had my surgery, when I went before him for the first time, and people line up in long, long, long lines, I want to read to you some of those lines. You will not believe this. Before I went, I received a 36-page PDF file on do's and don'ts while you're at the Casa, including what to wear, even down to your underwear. Here are some of the lines. And hundreds of people get into the main room, and then they start calling these lines. And if you don't speak Portuguese, you're not going to know what they're saying. So it's always good to have a guide. But people would line up, and the lines would go all the way out the building and all the way outside. There's a first-time line, a second-time line, an 8 o'clock line, a 2 o'clock line, the revision line, the soup line, the transition line, the current line, the intervention line. However, all of that sounds confusing, but I found that's the only way to control that many people, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. So after I finally made it through the first time and stood before him for no more than 4 seconds, he had already told his assistant that I needed surgery, and his assistant in Portuguese told my guide, and my guide told me in English. And so the next afternoon I had spiritual surgery. And spiritual surgery is very much sitting like a room in meditation. However, entities, these 33 entities that do the work at the Casa, they are, in their last incarnations, they were physicians, surgeons, healers of all kinds. And those are how you get your operation. The toughest part for me about getting the operation was I had to stay in bed for 24 hours. I couldn't do that, but I did. So what did I get out of my experience if I did not get a full and complete miracle? There are some people in our community that actually say, well, Robert, you didn't get what you went after. I got something even better. I will never look at a person in a wheelchair again ever in my life the same way. I will never see things the same way ever again. And if you'll notice the metaphors in which I'm using, it's all about seeing, how I see life, how I look at life, and there is the gift or the healing that I get. And everything has to be healed on the spiritual level before it works its way to the physical. And my first eye doctor's appointment, after I got back, did show improvement. So I haven't ruled out the cure, but what I know for sure is the healing. I want to share with you another way that I talked about the experience that I had. Bear with me. And by the way, after service today, I'm going to stick around. And if you want to do a question and A about Brazil and John of God, I'm sure you've already been thinking of, well, what about this or that? So if you want to stick around for questions and answers, we can do that. I wrote this after I really stopped and thought about what had happened to me that day. Although I had many incredible experiences, none were more powerful than the one I had at the pavilion the second day of my trip. For a few unbelievable minutes, I was allowed to experience what I can only describe as the collision between the God out there and the God in here. The merging of an infinite presence with a finite persona. It was like the universe was passing through the eye of a needle, or an entire ocean being poured into a drop of water. For that short time, my consciousness became cosmic, and I was spirit, unaware of my past or my future, only the eternal now. I lost all reasoning power in the surrender of the self that I knew, and returned to this self only when I thought I would burst. And the key word here is surrender. My intellectual mind had surrendered enough to allow spirit to take over. As a result of that experience, I know what oneness is like. For me, never again will oneness be a bunch of little circles all put together to make one circle. Oneness is one. The experience that I experienced was so large that it filled the universe. And for that moment, I was God. For that moment, I experienced what people talk about as God outside of themselves, but yet inside. And all of us are that. Each and every one of us are God in form. And all we have to do to heal, to connect, to have experiences, and we've all had them. I'm not claiming to be the only one. But we have to get this reasoning mind knocked off somehow. We have to get it quietened down. That little mind that says that I'm this or I'm that, or I'm going blind, or I have cancer, or I can't do this, or I can't do that. And that, for me, was what the trip was all about. And yes, I did come back healed. As a result of my trip, I no longer am closed in. I've started writing a new book. I'm even thinking about looking around and seeing a community to serve in. I have life, lots of life left, and frankly, I don't have time to go blind. So what I'd like to leave you with is just this thought. If there is something that you are experiencing right now, you also have the very faith that you need to heal it, whatever it is. And if you can't see that for yourself, and this is what Jesus meant when he said, when two or more are gathered, if you cannot see that for yourself, then ask a practitioner, ask a minister, ask a friend, ask someone outside of yourself that can see your wholeness, because that's what it's all about. It is all here, right here for us every single day. You know, the universe is constantly talking to us. We just have to recognize it when it's moving its lips. Our books talk to us, movies talk to us. Of course, services like this, our friends, the radio, it doesn't matter. It's all God in form, and it truly, truly is for us, not against us. Let us pray.
I want to thank you for joining us today. I am so grateful that you took your time to watch or listen to this message. If you found this message beneficial, I would ask you to go to our website. Once there, click on the Contribute button and experience the joy of conscious and purposeful giving. It is through your gifts that we are able to bring this message to the world. I would also ask you to please share this message with anyone you feel might benefit. Again, I want to thank you for joining me and the Agape community as together we bring joy to life.